Item 57, authorize the Mayor President to execute a cooperative endeavor agreement with the Bridge Center for Hope, Inc. for the purpose of operating and maintaining a treatment center that will provide mental health and substance abuse services and providing funds for adequate administrative and support staff in connection therewith, and to govern the rights and duties of the parties with respect to the funds generated by the ad valorem tax approved by the East Baton Rouge Parish voters on December 8, 2018 by the Mayor President. Ladies and gentlemen, the public hearing will speak on item 57. Mr. Philip Allard.
Philip Lillard.
Yes, sir.
Philip Lillard, 3062 Carmen Drive. This is my folder on this subject. I could talk for 3 hours. I'm totally against this. As a taxpayer, we all got to vote on a mental health center, which did not specify the Bridge Center. The wording of the actual tax proposition that I read did not include the Bridge Center. So as far as I'm concerned, it's an open field on who can provide these services. I see no reason that the Bridge Center of Hope should be just handed this responsibility. They have very little experience, the people in mental health or substance abuse, as far as I can see. Now, there's several issues I could go over on this. Excuse me, a couple of them. Well, to begin with, this was a BRAF project, Baton Rouge Area Foundation, from the very beginning. They hired the first director. I could go on if you need proof of that. It's been all over the news. So they started out, and actually, one of their affiliates just recently defaulted on the bond carry loan for $36 million. Now I find that very interesting that life just goes on. Nobody says anything about that when everybody's talking about a project like this that involves the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. Excuse me, I'm a little nervous here. But anyway, I also realized that the Baton Rouge Area Foundation paid for council members to go to San Antonio to view a mental health facility there. So they pay indirectly, make a contribution to the city parish government, which I have an email that I got a public records request that verifies that. Plus I have copies of vouchers for 7 council members that went. So basically the Baton Rouge Area Foundation pays for council members to go on these trips, and then the same council members come back and vote for items that the Baton Rouge Area Foundation is directly involved in. Now, I'm not saying that's illegal, but I will say I don't think it's right. I think there's a problem there. I think there's a big problem there, and that problem has been going on for a long time. So. The BRF paid for some ads for the Bridge Center.
If you could wrap it up, Philip, please. You got 8 seconds.
Right at the bottom, it says paid for Baton Rouge Area Foundation. So therefore, for those reasons and quite a few others, and I do have a nephew who suffers from mental illness.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Philip Fetterman.
Phil Fetterman, 11442 Sheraton Drive, Baton Rouge. I'm not going to reiterate what the previous person said about the tax and what was described, what we voted on. But I will say that it was left open. What should be done is we should be going out competitively bidding. Who's going to provide the mental health services for the parish? That would be the right thing to do. We might find out that maybe the Bridge Center is the only organization out there that can do it. But there might be other organizations out there that can also come in and do it. Furthermore, if you go to the Bridge Center, their website, they don't have a business plan, and I'm concerned about that. You would think, and when this was voted on back in Metro Council back in August 8th of last year, that between then and now that they would have a business plan of how they plan to operate. what they do have is a 9-page document. It says an initiative to decriminalize mental illness. Okay, but all that talks about is the cost of what they're going to. The cost is staffing the facility, but they don't discuss how they're going to operate the facility and what's best for it. Okay, I think there's also some other issues out there. This I would view as more. Okay, the person gets arrested. The person's determined that might have a mental health issue, and that we need to do something about it. But I think there's a larger issue out there, and I think there's some people here within the Metro Council would probably support it. But maybe we should be looking at a bigger picture out there. What do we do as a parish to take care of the mental health issues that are out there? Not just because the person happens to be arrested and is going to be incarcerated for a period of time. Okay. A few other things from a tax standpoint. In my discussion with one Metro Council member back in early August concerning this, this was provided as seed money, but I think we also need to be looking at, there was a facility up at Earl K. Long. My understanding was it was a well-run facility. Should the state be chipping in on this and taking care of the mental health issue? So with those, I have other additional comments, but I'll leave those with you. Some things to think about, and where do we go in the future with mental health here in this parish. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, a public hearing wish to speak on item 57. Anyone wish to speak on item 57? If you give your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Jennifer Cartwile, 1855 Old Carriage Lane, Baton Rouge. I'm a member of Together Baton Rouge on our Criminal Justice Committee, and one of the things that we talked about as we were putting together, as we've been researching criminal justice, is the problem that the police force finds when there are people with mental illnesses or when there are people who are addicted, getting arrested, and it's not necessarily a crime, but there's no place to go. So we have been supportive of the concept of the Bridge Center. When it was up for a vote, we were supportive because, in part, we assumed there was a firm plan of how this was going to be implemented. I almost feel like I'm a tale of two cities. I'm having a tale of two emotions. Very excited that it passed. Very disappointed to discover there was no clear plan. Very excited to hear that as people are asking questions, they seem to be being addressed, but very leery because it seems like this is a lot of money to go signing an agreement when there's a board. I've been looking at the website, just like the gentleman who was up. There's a board, but it's a board of people who don't currently provide these services. So how do we know they know how to provide these services? Or, like you said, why are we not getting bids on who can do this well? I'm not 100% sure we're at the signing a paper yet. And hopefully your discussions will assuage my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the public here will speak on item 57. Please give your name and address, please.
Gary Chambers, 6663 Willow Springs. So I voted to support the mental health tax. I have a brother who's paranoid schizophrenic. I grew up with him my entire life, and as a result, my family has had to deal with the realities of having someone with a mental illness. Had my family not had the resources to care for my brother, he could have been one of those people sitting in parish prison because he needed services, right? And so I supported the tax for that reason. It's very personal for me, like in a real way. My parents are in their 70s and they still care for my 50-year-old brother. And anybody who's dealt with someone that has a real mental illness knows that stripping resources from that population of people is one of the worst things that I think our community's ever done. And so I think that, my friend John, you guys have done a poor job convincing the community that the Bridge Center is the ambassador to carry this. And that's where the concern and the conversation comes from. I think that there are legitimate concerns for BRAF being involved in certain projects because they don't always have a successful track record on the end. right? They come up with great ideas and they tell us we should buy them, and we do. Consistently, we support the efforts that BRAF pushes to us, and some of them are good things. They're usually great ideas, but not always dotted the I's, crossed the T's, and communicated effectively with the community. The board had to be changed in the process of this because originally the board was all white, I believe. Now the board is diversified to be more of a reflection of the parish. I think that was a problem. And when you see those type of problems in the beginning, it causes people to be off-put. I hope that change is coming. I hope that the Republicans on the council can sometimes have the courage to vote against the foundation if need be, defer, right, so that the foundation and the partners at the Bridge Center can give us a real financial plan to tell us how is this going to work. And that the Democrats on the council can vote against the mayor. I know she's black and we support her, but sometimes we just rush things down the pipe without getting the full plan together so that we can vet it as a community, buy it as a community. The same people come here consistently asking for change, yet we continue to do the same things, expecting to get different results. I don't think anybody is against the Bridge Center getting it. I think we just want to see a hardcore, concrete plan that says this is the services that will be provided, this is where we're going, these are the people we're using, and make that as plain as ABC 1, 2, 3 so that people can digest it and trust it, and I think that people can get on board. But I do think that a valid point has been made that open it up for bid possibly. I'm not going to take an affirmative yes or no because usually when I go one way, it goes the other way, but I think that we've said enough to really consider this more. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the public hearing, we speak on item 57. Item 57. Yes, sir. You give your name and address, please, sir.
Hayden Carlos, 5960 Segan Lane. I echo the concerns that every person has come up here and made. I think they're all really valid concerns that deserve each and every one of your attention. But I have specific concerns with the agreement itself. It's my understanding that this vote is about this specific agreement, and while I understand that there are medical needs that need to be addressed, I don't know if the agreement that is before the council today adequately meets the concerns that everybody has here. First off, there's a scope of services area in that agreement that describes a mobile assessment team that the Bridge Center is going to use, but there's no understanding of what the mobile assessment team is, what authority they have, and I think that before going into an agreement with an organization like this, that we need to know what kind of authority they will have. There are due process concerns that come into play, especially with involuntary commitment of people who are suffering from a mental disorder. Secondly, I wonder if the council has considered what due process concerns are going to come out of this agreement and out of letting a private entity control what traditionally has been given to the public entities and agencies. Third, I think that there needs to be careful consideration into what the agreement says is how they'll be taking people into their care. There's no specification on how people will be taken into their care, and of course that raises due process concerns as well. District Attorney Hiller Moore described the Bridge Center as a stopgap that would basically replace the emergency room and law enforcement. And that's a big concern for me, especially because it's a private organization going into a traditionally public area, and the ability of people who are negatively affected by this private organization to find redress is going to be changed, and the understanding of how that process works out is important, and without details delineated in this agreement on what authority that the Bridge Center is going to have, how they're going to enact that authority, and how they're going to exercise their authority, the voters need to know, the people need to know exactly what will be going on. So, in short, I'm asking that the council do not accept the agreement as is and demand more specificity, especially the exhibits that are attached to the agreement as to what the Bridge Center is going to do if it decides to stay with the Bridge Center and not open up for bidding. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, the public hearing will speak on item 57. Item 57. Yes, sir. Give your name and address, please, for the record, sir.
Hi, my name is Brendan Sapas. I live at 6212 Stumberg Lane. And I just want to say that I think, like everybody else, we agree that this is an important issue and it's something that our community needs. You know, as somebody who, both in my personal and professional life, has interacted with the struggles of mental health, this is something that will really enhance our community. But you know, I find it interesting that the folks that sit on this council that talk so often about good government and wanting to have responsible government are not more put off by the fact that this has not been properly thought through. And so I think that good government is something that on both sides of the aisle politically that we can agree on, that we want. And so until we have a more well thought out proposal, I don't think that it makes sense to move forward at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, the public hearing will speak on item 57. Yes, ma'am. Give your name and address, please.
Jenny Landry, West Contour. I would like the council to postpone the vote on the Bridge Center item as it is presented tonight until they have had time to reflect and answer all the public comment expressed tonight, this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, the public hearing will speak on item 57. Anyone else? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Councilman Loop.
I have a question for someone from the Bridge Center, or a representative, or
Hi, Kathy Cleaver, Chair of the Bridge Center Board.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good.
The item says that obviously I was familiar with the mental health services that would be provided, but it also says substance abuse services. Can you describe to me what the Bridge Center hopes to offer in the form of substance abuse services?
And you know, right now, substance abuse and mental health services are often commingled. I mean, you know, most everybody that has substance abuse issue also has a mental health issue, and vice versa. We will be offering sobering beds, which would provide an opportunity for individuals to, you know, sober up and hopefully then go into treatment. They may just need to sober up and then get back into the community. We will also be offering medical detox or referring them to those services in the community. And after either...
Okay, so
sure.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask you about. So the sobering beds, or for someone that's intoxicated on alcohol, to give them a time to detox from alcohol.
Right.
And but the actual medical detox you're talking about would be for an opioid or some other.
Yes, it's a different. And again, you know, these individuals.
But that's a medical detox facility.
Correct. And we can offer medical detox beds if they're not offered in the community. We plan to hopefully have that opportunity to provide those beds if they don't have those in the community. If they're available in the community, we'll refer them to any providers in the community that are already providing those type of services.
Okay.
And I want to be clear that, you know, everybody talks about the fact that this plan hasn't been vetted. We've studied this for 3 years. I visited 3 other centers in Louisiana. I just want to be clear that you know, we have invested and we do have a very clear plan about how we're going to do it.
But please don't interpret my questions as supporting the argument that it hadn't been vetted, because we've been talking about this issue for 4 or 5 years at least. But I think the concern I have is I don't really know what type of substance abuse you intend to address, because the city parish already funds, at least in part, one medical
And we plan to use those beds. We're not going to duplicate anything that's already available.
Okay.
We would only provide those if they were not, they didn't have enough beds or they were out of those beds that are already provided in the community. We don't want to duplicate any of those services.
Right.
And we won't be providing long-term substance abuse treatment as well. Those are services that will be provided in
Right.
the
So
community.
the sober beds I'm familiar with because I think we discussed that before.
We did.
Instead of having these people detox at the parish jail, it's much cheaper and cost effective and beneficial to them to have a sober bed not in jail, right?
Right.
And I think stereotypically we all know what that would be or looks like. But the medical detox part is that's the kind of issue that's throwing me off, because if those beds already exist, we don't need to get into that business with these tax dollars, right?
No, we absolutely do not. And I've been very clear, we do not want to duplicate anything. We have that as part of a service delivery because it has been an issue before in getting enough medical detox beds. So if we need it, we want to be able to offer those, but we're not going to offer them if they're already offered in the community. We want to do services that are gap services.
Have you talked with any providers, because you have to have a doctor to do a medical detox, right?
Right.
Have you all talked with anybody, or is this just all
No, we've talked with
a general scope of what you may do?
We've talked with. We know what it entails to do those, and again, that's not something we're going to initially start off doing. That is only if we have to do those if we find there's not enough beds in the community.
Okay, my time's almost up, because initially when we got behind this project, y'all were going to partner and use a facility that already had a medical detox in it, right?
That was originally when they looked at the possibility of doing that there. But that's right now the plan is to be able to provide all the other services, the sobering beds, the 23-hour observation, respite beds in a facility separate and apart from that.
Right. I would just personally hate to see this turn into a medical detox facility when that's not really what we told the public it was going to be for.
Absolutely not.
But
again,
certainly we need those beds, right? So
we just know that if they don't have them, that's another big gap area, and we just wanted to have that opportunity if we needed it.
Right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Welch.
I've got a question about the termination and transition, Article 7, regarding the 120 days on these particular breaches. Don't we normally put in there a 30-day? Can somebody, the parish attorneys, don't we normally just do a 30-day convenience on notice that if we want to change it, we can? Why is that not?
Anyone from parish attorney's office, Andy or Bob?
We're going to bring up Bob Abbott from my office who looked at the contract to make sure they can answer that question for me, brother. He's calling up.
I mean, anybody from the Bridge Center is fine. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out. Normally, we have the contracts that I've seen. It's normally a 30-day convenience. Don't notice that if we want to cancel a contract, we do. But this one is I mean, there's a lot of things you got to do on this one.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Is Bob here? I mean, I know you
represent him. Yeah. Do you want to?
Mr. Foster,
Article 7 has a 120-day period that is reciprocal in that the city can terminate with a 120-day notice. The bridge sitter can terminate with a 120-day notice. There's a 45-day cure period as well. And this item was bounced back and forth between the parish attorney's office and the mayor's office and us, and that's the number that we came to. This isn't like pulling the plug on just any type of facility or just any type of entity. It's not like stopping a contract. There are medical facilities involved. There's medical people involved that have made commitments and contracts accordingly.
Yeah, the only thing that concerns me about that, the way this is particularly done, is that, just one of the things that Chandler had said regarding, what this ultimate, because right now we don't know what it looks like. I mean, I don't think the bridge sitter really kind of knows exactly what it's going to look like in 10 years. So I'm just trying to figure out if it isn't something that, what's going in our head of what it's going to look like and what is going on in y'all's head, unless there's, some sort of breach, but the breach doesn't really talk about what that is. I mean, as long as y'all are providing a service in whichever way y'all decide to provide the service, then that's the end of it. Does that make any sense?
Well, the way it's drafted, you've got a 45-day cure period, as does the Bridge Center. In the event, for instance, in the Bridge Center's case, if you didn't pay us, you didn't pay the Bridge Center, that would trigger a notice to cure. If the Bridge Center was not providing services as anticipated and described in the agreement, you would have the right to issue the 45-day notice to cure. That's a 45-day period, not 120 days. 120 days to terminate, but it's not uncommon at all to have a notice.
I'm not worried about the cure. I mean, if it's something where a council, a mayor says, hey, we think you ought to be providing more of these types of services because we're still seeing these types of problems that are coming through, and we'd like you to take a look at this, and then you give a 45-day notice, and they can either cure it. But if they say, hey, we think we're giving all we're going to give in this instance, because we don't know what that is necessarily right now. As we stand here, we're on the beginning side of things that we haven't done before. And so I'm concerned that if we don't reach each other's expectations of what we're going to do, we're going to give away the tax dollars, but really have no way of being able to say, I want to do something. This isn't what we were thinking, or this isn't serving the way we anticipated to serve. I guess that's really where normally all the contracts that I've seen is that there's just been a 30-day convenience, and I don't have a problem with extending it, but it's that material breach language.
Well, because of the investment that will have to be made to get this up and running, a 30-day termination for convenience period would be.
But isn't the investment coming from the taxes?
What's that?
Isn't the investment coming from the taxes?
Not all of it. Not startup.
Well, no, but they'll be paid. So there's going to be startup costs that aren't going to be paid back.
There'll be startup costs. I presume some of them will be paid back, but there will be commitments that will be made with those startup funds that can't be recovered.
Councilman, you going to want your additional time?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councilman Loop.
Could I have you come up real quick? I pulled up the first year's budget, and there's $421,000 allocated to medical detox.
And again, this was the budget that was developed with that anticipation that that's a possibility. And I want to be clear, at one point, if you remember, there were no medical detox beds operating in Baton Rouge. And when we were developing that plan, that was during that period of time, and that's why we included it.
Baton Rouge Detox has been around,
yeah, but
I know at least since I've been on
No,
council.
But they had a period of time that they were closed,
yeah,
right, for over 6 months. And I think, again, our concern was just that we want to provide... what we have put in the service array is the whole continuum of services for crisis stabilization. That is part of it. And
so
again,
this is not going to be spent the first year?
No, we have no intention of doing that because the medical detox beds are working right now. As long as those beds are available, we don't anticipate that. And
but this is what the mayor gave us today.
Right.
I think I got it as far as your budget. And it also has something that's really concerning to me. It says, funds currently allocated to the Baton Rouge Detox available, amount $312,000.
Right. Yeah, and
one of the to me suggests you're going to take that money from
and there was actually a letter that was put on the website with this saying that things had changed regarding detox and crisis stabilization since the report was written.
What
that
website?
Was on our website, the Bridge Center's website. Yes, sir.
Okay, but I don't have.
No,
this is limited to 5 beds. Baton Rouge Detox, I think. Their capacity is more than 5 beds.
I think they're up to 30 beds, aren't they?
Right, and then there's another one that opened
recently.
Right.
And yes. So again, when this service array was developed and that budget was developed, it was developed with the intent of that whole service array that could possibly be needed. Any services that we don't provide.
But how am I supposed to vote to approve your budget if I really don't know what you're spending the money on?
Well, again, I thought we were very clear in what we would be spending the money on. Any additional services that we might need to be provided that are not included as part of that budget, we would also we're not expecting you to have our budget before you. We will have a budget for you when we know exactly what each of these services cost.
But if I vote for the cooperative endeavor agreement, I believe that budget can be approved by your board and doesn't necessarily have to come through us.
No, I thought we said doesn't it have a stipulation in there about coming back to you on the budget?
Yes. Yeah, the budget has to be reviewed by this council.
Yes.
Okay.
So that we will present to you a budget once when all those services are finalized. Part of our plan is to go out for bids. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not disturbed about it. I mean, you have 3 RNs you're going to hire, nurse practitioner according to this, and an NP. I assume that's a physician.
Nurse practitioner.
Well, we're paying a nurse practitioner $123,000 a year.
That's what a nurse practitioner. That's a typical salary for them.
Wow.
But again,
consulting physician.
These numbers were all coming as part of the array of services developed based on having an entire crisis stabilization system.
That in itself creates an issue because you're telling me you may do all this huge universal services, but when we presented it to the voters, we said this is a mental health facility. I mean, there are a lot of components associated with that. I understand that. Drug addiction being one, but I literally last week helped out Baton Rouge Detox get some of the funds because they didn't have their 2-year audit. So, I'm passionate about that aspect of it.
You would absolutely have to approve us being able to spend money to use money on medical detox as part of that. And our budget that will be presented again, the service array isn't changing. This is the same service array we've talked about for 3 years. That same service array that y'all saw in San Antonio. All of those are part of that. We were very clear.
I don't think they do medical detox.
No, but we were very clear.
Right?
We were very clear that we were doing this based on what was going on in the community at that time. And like I said, our letter explains that.
Right.
That at that point, when we did when we recommissioned Emergent Center to do the re-looking at the service array, both that and crisis intervention were also, you'll see that as part of that. It is no longer part of our consideration because Crisis Intervention Center remained intact. We were trying to simply fill gap areas that weren't being filled.
Okay. Councilman,
appreciate
time's
you.
up.
Sure.
1 second. $5 beds for $500,000 is not cost effective for the Bridge Center. It's just not. So,
Councilman Watson.
I appreciate your time.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Watson.
Kathy, I'm glad you're up here. I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
First, I've heard other council members and other folks saying that there's no medical expertise or therapy expertise on the BRAF board. I know you've got a 19-member board. Could you tell me the number of people that have medical experience and psychological or substance abuse disorders that are on the board? Managing a facility that provides therapy there.
Out of those, 11 individuals have direct experience, proven direct records on both mental health and substance abuse issues.
Having said that, the Bridge Center would be a crisis intervention center, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now and once that crisis has been remediated, it is the plan of the Bridge Center to place each of these individuals in a continuum of care and manage them through case managers to other services that exist in the community. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is it to be expected that if you're not going to duplicate any services that are out there, if some of these other services that would be part of the continuum of care that you would case manage these folks onto post-crisis intervention, that if someone came up with a new offering, that you may eliminate that offering in the Bridge Center? Or if someone fell off and didn't do a service that you normally required to hand someone off to, that you might have to add that to your offerings.
Absolutely. We would have to adjust based on what's available in the community. Again, all we want to do is fill those gap services.
Gotcha.
We don't want to duplicate.
And that would be something that would come back to this
It would come
council
back-
to effectively
the
vote on
very
the budget.
specific budget in terms of that service array and what we would be delineating for each of those services has to come back to this council prior to us implementing any type of budget.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. I also wanted to say Councilwoman Freiberg texted me that she's very supportive of this, and she wanted me to say that today. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I was going to speak. Can I speak? Is that okay? You know, I certainly believe that we needed this program. I didn't support putting it on the ballot because I was trying to get the money maybe possibly from somewhere else. But I guess the problem that I have right now is that if it was this COA or if it was mosquito abatement coming up here, we would be giving them, and I'm going to be fair and I'm going to be consistent. Because if that was them, I would, the things that you're telling me and what I'm seeing here, I'm getting late, I just don't agree with. I voted against, as far as BRAF, the tram, because, half the time, we're the ones with an empty bag we're holding. But what happens is, I got this. But I just have a problem because it just seems like we don't have no clear path of what the voters wanted, or at least what I was anticipating wanting. Not that I don't support it, but I just think we need to go back and circle the wagons just because if this was another agency up here, my God, we would be losing it.
Well,
I'm going to try to be calm today. I'm going to be calm.
What we presented was that array of services that, again, we've talked about for the last 3 years. There's no difference in that array of services and filling those gap services. The specific budget, until we have responses, because we will be going out to private providers to ask them to give us responses on how they could meet these services. Until we get those specific responses in each of those areas, I can't give you that budget, but we will. We have to come back and bring you that budget.
I understand that, but the problem I have is that we're 90 days from an election, and we're not much more organized than what we were. I mean, that's just my opinion. I mean, Mr. Foster does COA, and he knows that we hold their feet to the fire in this agency, and I've said it before, that the agency is going to be held to the same standard as they are. That's fair and that's consistent. They're going to be required, in my eyes, in my opinion, they're going to be required to do the same things that the COA is going to do, the same thing. But I just have a problem right now. It just seems it's a cluster.
Well, and again, in our eyes, we have committees that are established that are working on each of these individual with each of these individual areas to be able to give you that. We have been working nonstop since the election,
and I'm not trying to put you on the spot or beat you or anybody else. I'm just saying what it looks like from my perspective, the perception, and the people I'm representing, and we sit there. And the 1.5 mils, and you're getting probably a little over $6 million a year. I mean, that money on top of the COA, and you see with the library, I mean, we're just having problem after problem. And I don't know. I have some concerns, but I mean,
I want to be clear. We have to come back. The idea of us moving forward with the CEA is for us to be able to start moving forward and be able to make some, talk to Baton Rouge General and work with them on space. Contact providers. Until we have that, it's very hard for us to move to that next step. We have to come back to you with a very clear budget once we have responses back for individuals that will be providing those services. And I just want to also say, I mean, we've never changed in terms of that array of services and what we always had planned to provide.
Well, I mean, I don't usually talk this long, but I mean our tail's on the line.
I understand.
I mean, in the voter.
And ours is too.
No, I know yours is.
We have to be accountable and responsible, and that's all we've been trying to do since we first started with this project 3 years ago.
And just tell Phil I didn't go to San Antonio. So anyway, Councilman Welch.
I will say this. That we are getting a lot of the stuff that we've been asked to vote on tonight with this late. We have talked about this. We've talked about this a lot. We've talked about this online. We've talked about this offline. We've talked about this individually. I mean, there has been a lot of discussion surrounding from the mayor's office to the council members. The scope of services that is in Exhibit B, that has not changed. That has always been at the absolute core of what was talked about with the voters that I recall. The level of detail, obviously, from Exhibit B is not there, only because we don't know what that necessarily looks like because we don't know the providers. I get that. That's one of the biggest things, though, is that we with this cooperative endeavor agreement, we still, if these things are checked off for us, I mean, the lawyer in me, if they're checked off, if we provide one thing or we provide one service or something like that, then there's no material change such that somebody can say, look, we're not providing enough. We focus too much over on this side of it. We'd like to see something different. And there's no opportunity necessarily other than through the budget portion of this to either approve the budget or not approve that, because that is the big stick, obviously. Is like, hey, right, we want you to, we're not approving this budget until you've done X, Y, and Z, because ultimately you got the purse strings to do it. So I will say that there is that fidelity with that scope of services, and there is that fidelity with the ability, as opposed to some other agencies to where it's like, hey, we're going to present the budget. Whether you approve it or not doesn't really matter. We're just going to present you the budget. That is not what happens here. This has to be approved by the council. So I'm a little less concerned whenever it comes to that, but I am still extremely concerned when it comes to the scope of services and the lack of detail of how that plans on being provided to the and what those things look like. And I also get it that we are 90 days post the election, and some of these plans should have maybe been in place ahead of time, whenever other than just an idea of what we were going to do.
Well, again, we for us, it's when we discuss it, it's very clear what that scope of services is and how they're going to be provided, because again, we've modeled it after other centers that are across the nation that are doing similar type services. So for us, it's very, and again, our issue right now is we want to move forward with this. We want to be able to get to the next step. Right. And it's very difficult to get to the next step without having a CEA in place.
So I will do this. I do, and I agree. I mean, this is something, you've had people that have come out and talk about how it affects them personally and what they've seen. I've seen this. I've seen this in my law practice. I have seen this in my personal life. I've seen this. So I think it's important to do that. I think it's important that we get beyond trying to figure out what it's going to be, and I'm guilty of it. I want to know, the question was asked, how many people provide medical services on your board now? You can tell me that. You can't tell me what that's going to look like in 3 years, and that's not fair to you to ask you that either, okay? And so what I'm saying is this, is that I think by keeping the ability to hold the purse strings, we will be able to do it. So I do support this. And I'd make a motion to approve it so we can get beyond this. And if it takes it into the budget side of it, then we deal with it on the budget side of it.
Okay, we had a motion to approve by Welch, second by Hudson. Councilwoman Green.
I just have a question. I'm trying to get understanding on. You said that there's a stipulation in something. I haven't fully been able to read all the things that were submitted today, but the CEA, is the stipulation to come back in that? Because
yes.
I've looked at it. Can you tell me what article?
On the budget, the stipulation on the budget.
She said there's a stipulation to come back to the council. I went through it a couple times. I can't find it. The beginning? Okay.
If you look at Article 5.3, and this was the same CEA that you're looking at presumably now is the one that was approved or that was introduced 2 weeks ago.
I'm just asking.
And yes, ma'am. So to provide the city parish with an annual budget.
What? Just tell me what page.
This is 5.3 on page 7.
Okay. Thank you.
Got it? Anything else? Okay, thanks.
You finished, Councilwoman? Councilman Hudson?
Well, I just want to say I'm encouraged by this conversation. We don't normally put this level of scrutiny on cooperative endeavor agreements, and so I think this is a really good discussion that we're doing. But well, we didn't do it in the past on many of the ones that I've seen, so I'm encouraged by it. I will tell you, I'm also encouraged by some of the transparency items that the mayor's office, after getting council feedback, added to it. Many of those same ones we put in for the Council on Aging. But when you couple that with this section 5.3 that was just discussed, where it comes back before us in the budget, that's everything. There's your accountability right there. And so I am encouraged by this. I will tell you, I did look into the issue of whether or not it should be brought out to be competitively bid, because that is something that I've always been a champion of. I will tell you in this instance, because we are contracting with a nonprofit, we do have the ability to not do that competitive process. And so, look, I look at this. I know the argument has been made that there's no track record to evaluate with the Bridge Center because it's a new organization. You could have said the same thing about the 1992 Olympic basketball team. Those guys didn't have a track record. They were a brand new team, but they ended up being the dream team. And that's what we've assembled here, is some of the best practitioners that this parish has to offer to deliver these services. So I'm encouraged by it, and I'll be voting in favor.
Councilwoman Banks.
She let me skip her one more time. I have one more question regarding it's no bid process, but she mentioned about private providers being able to be a part of the conversation and to actually submit their.
Part of what we're doing as the operations committee is we've been exploring what providers understand that crisis stabilization has been done nowhere in Louisiana. We do not have crisis stabilization centers in Louisiana.
Can you talk about that process?
Sure.
It was mentioned.
Yeah, and so because they haven't been done in Louisiana, we've been exploring both who could possibly do this, both locally as well as nationally. Our plan is just to have a solicitation of proposals, which we will go out and determine and have providers respond to us, both locally and nationally, in terms of being able to do these services and provide these. So it's not a necessarily competitive bidding process. It is a solicitation of proposals that will need to be evaluated and again for us as a board to make a decision as to whether or not we believe strongly that they have the experience, the track record to be able to provide those services.
And you said for crisis stabilization?
For the whole array of crisis stabilization.
Thank you.
All right, Councilwoman.
Cat. Somebody. A couple of questions. You said you've been working on this for 3 years. Any reason why you didn't pursue licensing?
Well, again, we don't have a center. We don't have a place. That we have been working on the concept
you didn't need
of
a place
this.
To pursue, according to DHH, you didn't need a place to pursue licensing.
Yes, you have to have a place to pursue. You must have they come out and physically inspect it to be able to provide it.
So in 3 years, any reason you don't have a place?
Because we haven't had funding for a place. We don't even get the funding until next year.
Okay. So you all are supported by BRAF, right?
We are getting both. We have got startup funding for our surveys that we.
How much did you get?
Well, again, some of this. I mean, it comes from BRAF, 700,000. I think is what we received from both Philip Franchick as well as other. Donors.
So you spent 700,000
Yes.
700,000 on a study.
No, that 700,000 included support of our our jail diversion program, as well as campaign funding.
You spent part of it to get it approved.
Yes.
Okay. Wow. So the 700,000 you've already spent. Did the city give any money towards that?
Well, the cooperative, we have, after the first year for the jail diversion program, the city put $260,000 for the jail diversion program.
And how many people did you serve for that?
58 people is how many people, I think it's 50 something that the program has served at this point.
Okay. Daryl. So one of the things she mentioned is how they are going to solicit someone to run. Any reason why the city could not just solicit someone to run it?
I think the interesting thing here is this would be a method to do it. If we went to do it, we don't have a health department specifically for the city. I guess you could always say that the council could do it, the mayor's office could do it. We do have a track record with the Bridge Center.
So what is the reason the city cannot? Why do they need a third party? Because one of the things that I found out is that it's nothing for a department to add or delete a program. Also, I was told that this could have been brought under the Department of Health and Human Services that the city has. So we could have a department. There was also a recommendation from other stabilization and mental health facilities that I spoke with that you could have gotten a project manager to facilitate the whole process. That all of this would have been considerable saving. That the least of all the opportunities that were where you could create an agency, where you could work with a state agency like Capital Area Human Service District that would give a holistic approach, where the mayor could have entered with a project manager that would facilitate it for the city. All of those would have been considered across the board, and none of the persons that I spoke with throughout the country, even the people in San Antonio gave me other names, said that this made sense to them. And so that's what I'm asking. Who else did you talk to that, and those other things that I've added, why? I just don't understand. I guess it's two questions. Number one, why wasn't any of those considered? Number two, what is the number one reason why the Bridge Center is the choice?
I think it really just has to do with a long-term relationship that probably started, I think, in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. That was a nonprofit, and then it continued for 2018, 2019, where we had the diversion program.
Now, you do understand that's before the last administration. So I'm saying, so I can understand that under Kip. We saw a lot of craziness with Braff and Kip. But I'm saying under this mayor, what is the draw?
I think it really is a continuation. In 2018,
so the
we
mayor
did fund
is just
part of it.
Kip's legacy with Braff.
It really was the council. It was part of the 2018 budget, and then 2019 budget. We had the small program, and this is really an extension of what that is.
That's your reason. Right. Okay. Mr. John Spain, please.
Councilwoman, you're going to want your additional time? Would you have I
10 seconds all of 3 minutes.
No, you had 5 minutes.
Erica took my other
No, she didn't. I gave you 5 minutes.
Yeah, I took 5 minutes. You're good.
Okay.
So one of the things that Darryl brought up is 2016. And I remember in 2016, myself and some other persons were working on getting an ER in North Baton Rouge in Howell Place. And it was me, Cleve Dunn, Gary Chambers, and a representative Edmond. And one of the things when we spoke with you is we talked about the fact not only that we wanted the emergency room part, but we also spoke because this was a time where the city was also considering medical services for prison medical. So one of the things that we brought to you and we were asking support is that that we would have a back entrance where we would help the parish prison with medical behavior and mental health, where we will also serve that population. Same thing what you're saying now, to ease the congestion at parish prison, also so that they can have that triage, whether they needed to go from there to a mental health facility, to a hospital, to an emergency, whatever. And I distinctly remember in 2016 you said it's a good idea, but not without money. And I think that's what it is today. And so when what's his name? Daryl talks about the fact that it was your idea. It may have been your idea, maybe it wasn't, but it's the same thing, not with your money, but with our money. Well, and I think that is the problem that we all have. And more than anything, I can't understand, though I understand his reason, how can overwhelmingly, even the article that Steve Hardy put, that people said, we overwhelmingly, I think it was in December, right after the tax, people support the tax, but they don't want it to go to the nonprofit, the Bridge Center. How could the mayor, how can you, how can the Bridge, how can y'all just ignore that?
Are you ready for me to respond?
Yes, you got one minute, please.
Okay. I would like to, with all due respect to the council, remind you of a couple of things that are different from
now I need you to answer the question.
Councilwoman, please let him respond.
But I just don't need him to take more than 30 seconds.
First of all, I want to remind you that no public money will be spent on this project for 1 year. And we've known that because we're being paid in arrears. So we have 1 full year to develop.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to get to your question.
But I need you to go quickly because I don't have a lot of time. So I just need you to say.
The answer is, Councilwoman Banks, is that it was a good idea then and it's a good idea now. And 68% of the voters said it is so critical, even though we hate to pass additional taxes. They said that,
but they don't want you.
They didn't say that. But let me finish if you don't mind.
Because you didn't put mental health, but the article said.
If you don't mind.
Okay. Let me
simplify because
my time running out. Let me simplify it. Let me just simplify it because my time running out.
I'll give you a simple answer.
Give me one reason why the Bridge Center qualifies to run this program. One sentence.
Because the state of Louisiana largely abandoned mental health a number of years ago when they closed down the institution.
Okay, that's the reason why they voted for it. Why the Bridge Center?
Let me finish.
But he won't answer the question.
I'm going to finish if you will interrupt me.
Okay, go ahead.
This council and its predecessors could have put a mental health tax on the ballot anytime they wanted to. They didn't. When the state and this local government did not act, a private entity spent its time doing the research to present and educate to the public. As you've heard, we ran a campaign in order to create this facility that is in need.
All right, I got your answer. I thank you. That is what you're supposed to do as a foundation. You're supposed to come up with ideas.
And we did.
And you're supposed to fund them.
And we did
to make sure there's equitable quality of life for everybody. It does not mean you keep raping the city for money. It does not mean you keep raping you don't even pay taxes in these Baton Rouge. You told me yourself, I live on Falls River. I don't even pay
Councilwoman, that has nothing to do with who lives.
It does. He takes the money
you're out of order. It has nothing to do.
Again.
You have nothing. It has nothing to do where anybody lives. This is about the Bridge Center.
$60 million. That's crazy. With no plan.
Are you finished?
No, 42 seconds. 41 seconds. BRAF has continuously stolen. They lost money on the Shaw Center. They this place right here. They've lost money. Bike shares, we're losing money. We got problems with that. The watershed, ain't nothing going on over there. They tried to do the tram. There is no track record.
The Shaw Center
I didn't ask you nothing. There is no track record. The reason we have division between the North and the South began with BRAF.
You got 9
I can
seconds.
say this. Well, that is the hope. And until we stop this bleed, we will never come together as a city because they are the problem, making $400,000 to $700,000. What method of philanthropy killing us?
Councilman Hudson.
Mr. Spain, if you don't mind.
Killing us.
Your time's up. Okay.
This community has many partners that we get together with to move this community forward. And we usually treat them with respect and dignity. I'm afraid we didn't do that just now. And so I would like to give you a little bit of time to make the comments that you were hoping to make.
Thank you very much. The one thing we all agree on, whether it's personally impacted us, as some of you all know, or whether it's a community as a whole, there's no disagreement that we need to provide these services. No one's arguing that this isn't the most important issue in our day in terms of substance abuse, the epidemics around opioid, mental health issues. The simple fact is that where we are sending our fellow neighbors and citizens to jail and to emergency rooms is an inappropriate response for this.
Mr. Spain, I don't mean to interrupt you, and no disrespect. I usually don't let people come up because the public comment segment is over with. But if he has a question,
I'm sorry,
Dwight. If you have a question, you're more than welcome to ask a question. But to give it free time because the public hearing's already been held.
Thank you, Scott.
Mr. Spain, in as brief of time as you can, if you would outline the scope of services that you plan to offer and what you feel the promises that were made during the ballot initiative and direct the path that you expect the Bridge Center to move forward, I would appreciate you doing that.
Thank you very much. I think our plan is based on national consultants and visits to the state of the arts around the country. We always knew that we had a year to plan it. We're not surprised that we don't have a finalized plan for you. We knew that we had 1 full year. And in that year, we bring the experts together. We will do a public solicitation and ask for, based on a criteria of all those items identified in the election, of the services to be provided. And national and local companies can respond to that. It will be a transparent public process. That RFP will be shared with the public so they'll know what criteria are being asked for when we solicit proposals. The board will then make a decision in public conversations and in a transparent way and choose an entity or entities to provide those services. Part of that process will be identifying where that will take place at a facility in Baton Rouge. And then we will start giving you detailed budgets on what those individual costs are of the various components, and there are 6 of them, I believe, that we have to deliver on. But until we have the proposals in our hands, we don't know whether one company is going to provide 2 or 3 of those elements, and another company is going to have to be a subcontractor to that. We don't have that. But you have already determined tonight that you have a 45-day out. At any point in the process, if you're not happy and we can't answer the questions, you can terminate the agreement before we ever take a dime of public money. The first penny isn't going to be given till 2020 in January. So we have 9 months left to work with you, to work with the community, to answer a lot of these people's very legitimate questions. We'll welcome the opportunity to have a chance to answer one and all and go to as many meetings as we need to. It is correct to say 68% of the voters want this to happen, and they want it to happen right. That's the only way any of us would have it. And we have an obligation to answer the questions in great detail. We have a business plan that was a starting point based on what we think the estimated costs from our consultants were to deliver each of those services. But until we actually engage with real companies that are in this area of expertise, we won't know what the final numbers are. But we've always known that. And I'm sorry we weren't more transparent about some of those details earlier. But I will say again, it's not the Council on Aging. It's not other agencies that you're allocating money. There's no real risk here. We've got 12 months to work on it. We have 12 months to you and I collectively and with the people who oppose this today to find consensus to guarantee that we deliver what the voters said they wanted.
Thank you, Mr. Payne.
Thank you.
Councilman Watson. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I would just say that, I was like Scott. I did not vote to put this item on the ballot. I thought that there was a better way to find the money, but the vote happened. And they're right. It was 68% of the vote. The community has spoken very clearly. They want us to move forward on this item. A good plan has been put together. The accountability is there. We do have the ability to go back and pull back these funds if we need to. It is time, we politicize just about everything up here on this council. But when we start politicizing mental illness, I mean, that's a whole new low. So look, it is time for us to move forward. And I just encourage this council to take action tonight.
Councilman Watson.
John, if you could come back up. Prior to the election, how many advertised public meetings were held across this community talking about the need for the passage of this tax?
75.
And was there in any way holding back the idea that the Bridge Center was going to be the idea that was going to be the mental health facility that you were talking about at every one of those meetings?
No, and it's equally true that we were absolutely transparent because we're required by law to put the Baton Rouge Area Foundation's name on every ad. To say that people didn't know we were involved is untrue. The law required that those people buying those ads put their name on it, and we proudly did because we wanted this to be successful. It had failed once. This was our last attempt. We raised more money. We ran a better campaign. We did a better job of educating people. We went into every neighborhood. We talked to literally dozens of neighborhood organizations, and frankly, anybody that wanted to hear the story, we went. And the elected officials of this parish, the sheriff, the coroner, the DA, all of them participated in over 75 meetings.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Councilwoman Wicker.
Thank you. I want to say a couple of things just from a personal perspective. And I think probably I try as much as I can to remain consistent in everything. And I know that we had the conversation about Council on Aging and them having the opportunity to be able to not only receive the dollars, but also have an opportunity to prove what they can do with those dollars. And the community spoke well and loud on what they expected. And I did, take the trip. And it wasn't about taking some trip because they were giving fancy meals. My husband paid for my meal, but we did. I think I had one meal with you guys, but what the attempt was to go so that you can learn about something that we were trying to bring back to this community. I'm a firm believer that exposure is the best educator, and so we had an opportunity to go to be exposed to something that we were trying to accomplish here in the city of Baton Rouge that we believed was a good model of how this should be done. It should be done effectively. And we met some really great people, talked to elected officials, and had really great information about a solution, a potential solution that we realistically could implement here in Baton Rouge. So I was sold when I went there. I did see what they were trying to do, the solutions to many of the problems that we had been trying to figure out for a very, very long time. And I'll say this, and I don't know a whole lot about where everybody lives. I can make some assumptions, but I will tell you this. I live in a neighborhood that is probably out of everybody the most urban core of the city of Baton Rouge. Where I live is probably right down the street, I think, from at some point that they may be trying to talk about locating some of the services. And I will tell you this, on any given day and time, up and down my street, sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning, knocking on my door, anytime that I may hop out of my vehicle to go into the car, there are individuals that are in my neighborhood that are suffering from mental illness. And they are looking and trying to figure out services and opportunities that may be available to them to be able to get some help. And so for many, many years, my family and I have prepared sandwiches, have prayed for people in our front yard, have done whatever we can do to make sure that the needs of that population are done and are done in a manner that people feel like they can function with integrity. We absolutely have to have this service, and I don't know who else may be out there that are now desiring and wanting to do this and all of that kind of stuff, and I get all of that, but I can tell you that in my opinion, based on what I see in the community that I live in, so this is not something that I'm imagining, I see it on a daily basis, I live with it every day. I don't think that we can lose the momentum and try to refigure out how to start this over and go through that process all over again and wait and expect that these individuals that are on the street, that are sleeping on street corners trying to get access to services until we figure out whatever our agendas are or whatever our details are. I think it's wrong. I think that the community, the city has spoken. They believe that this is an important issue that all of us needed to get behind. The majority of us that believe that there is a better way did that. And I think that just with the other things that have come before us, that we take this opportunity to allow for this process to happen. Yes, we manage we manage it very, very well. And we make sure that we hold people accountable and hold people accountable as it relates to taxpayer dollars. But I will say that from a person that's living with this every day, that has 6 children, that loves this community, this issue is of utmost importance, and we can't afford to lose a day without having access to these quality services. And I just ask that we go ahead and progress and move forward and try to have exactly what we saw when we went on that trip, if not better.
Councilwoman Amorosa.
I come from a little different perspective. I appreciate the people whose family members suffer. My son works for Acadian Ambulance, and he has the 7P to 7A duties. And any given night, he will have to transport 3, 4, 5 mental, help me here, please. Thank you. Mental patients, and they're not here in Baton Rouge. Last night he went as far as Shreveport. He went to Alexandria. He'll go to Slidell. And these are not only adults, these are also children. I know one night he came in, and he transported, I think, a 7-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 15-year-old. And that's tragic. And I think a lot of, I was talking to Dr. Clark today, the importance of this facility being here in Baton Rouge is that when you have these people, they need their family members around them, especially if you have children. And I'm hoping somewhere down the line we will have a facility that will be open to children. It is tragic, he tells me, these children that he transports up to Shreveport, 7-year-olds having to go to Shreveport. And these children need to remain in Baton Rouge. They need to remain around family members. So little different perspective there. And it would keep my son safe as well. You know, it's kind of nerve-wracking to have your child out on the road in the middle of the night. But anyway, I think we should go ahead and move forward.
Okay, I'm going to say one thing. Mr. Spain, what is the timetable, you think, if this CEA is approved? What's your timetable to do what you need to do to get?
That's a starting point. So once it's signed, we believe that the time period of probably May and June, the solicitation for proposals would be prepared. That gives us time to work on that detailed, what you would call an RFP, that lists all the things. Then we have a public process where that solicitation is open. We would expect that in a reasonable amount of time we would accept those proposals and have them under consideration and for review in the June-July time period. That may not be exactly right, but I think that's it. But sometimes toward the end of the summer, I think we have a pretty good idea of who those providers are and can then start looking at finalizing budgets and finalizing locations, staffing. If you think about our desire, and we all wanted it open as quick as we can, but the proposal calls for 45 employees. If you're opening a business of any kind, you can't open on day one without some lead time in order to train the appropriate people. So how many months before opening do we have to actually start hiring people, have them trained for opening day? The question there is, what funds are available to even pay for those people? It's very likely that you'll have the plan put in place many months before, but in January you start receiving money, and this center could not open maybe until the first quarter of 2020 when the funding is available. Now, we're going to look for additional funding. Can we get enough to actually be able to do some of these things before public funding is available? We're going to do that. But I think that's our rough timeline. As we stand here tonight, as Kathy has told you, there are multiple committees that are already looking at it, that have had initial conversations. Obviously, because of the interest in this, companies across the country and in our own community are calling and asking what they need to do to prepare to respond to a solicitation. That's our rough timeline. Can it slip a little bit? But that's where I think we are to now, Mr. Wilson.
Okay. I have, not that I don't support the Bruce Center. I mean, I understand.
You told me you did.
I do, and I do support it. The thing is, I just hate getting an email at 2:40 that gives me all the, the budgeting and different numbers, and that's what I'm kind of concerned about. Which
I think that latest was in response to a public records request by Councilwoman.
Well, I mean, I'm going to make a substitute motion. I know probably people don't want to hear it, but it may fail. But I'm going to make a substitute motion to defer for 2 weeks, just to look at I just want to be able to meet with you and see where our path and where, as far as the numbers, that's, it may not pass, but I mean, that's fine, but I may not get a second, but I'll make a substitute motion to defer for 2 weeks. Second by Cole, Luke. Okay. Okay, are there any objections? Which I'm sure there are. Okay, what we're going to do, we'll vote on the machines on the substitute motion to defer for 2 weeks. And Ashley, you can open up the machines.
Machines are open on the motion to defer for 2 weeks.
Motion fails. Okay, we had a motion to approve by, I'll read my white, Welch and Hudson, second by Hudson. So we'll open up the machines and we'll vote on approval.
Machines are open on the motion to approve.
Motion passes. Item 57 is approved.